All right. Hello. Welcome back to the Messy Success Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Henson, your host. This is episode 199. This is an experiment. We are upgrading our studio equipment slowly but surely. So I have just gotten the Nikon Z30 and I'm testing it out today. I feel a little bit outside of my element, but I am so excited to be here for episode 199. And we are going to be really reflecting on the last 7 years of hosting a podcast and what I have learned and what has worked and what has not worked. And then when we get into episode 200, we're going to talk about where we're going. So, as you know, we are having a really big celebration for our 200th episode, and you can join the fun. Go to elizabethhenson.co/celebrate200. We have some freebies for you, including a really incredible leadership meditation slash visualization exercise. I do these with my students and community members and at live events. This is the first time I've ever offered one free to the public, to anyone. So you do not want to miss that. These are activities and practices that I do that really help me when I am lacking clarity, when I'm just restless, when I feel like my vibrational frequency is lowering. What else is in the guide? You have an opportunity for a free coaching day with me via voice note, which I use Voxer, which is incredible. So, an entire day, you'll get to go back and forth and get free coaching from me. No pitch, no questions asked. It's just my gift to you for being a listener of the Messy Success Podcast. And then for those of you that like the visuals, the creatives, I have a vision board that I use for my ideal client avatar. And it's really just a fun Canva board where you can kind of like get pictures and words and a paragraph to describe your ideal client. And I kind of did these freebies intentionally so that I was covering all the different types of learners and types of creatives, even though these are three tools that I absolutely love and use all of them. But the first tool, again, is that audio visualization exercise. Those of you that love audio. The second one is a free coaching day for my kinesthetic learners who just want to be in the nitty gritty and go back and forth and experience what it's like to work with me and be coached with me. And then the third one is very visual, very playful for my Canva lovers, my brand lovers who really want to explore your ideal client and really fun ways to represent it. You can share it with your team, you can hang it on your wall. It's really great. So again, you can download those at elizabethhenson.co/celebrate200. And then we have some really incredible discounts and opportunities. If you're local, you're not going to want to miss it because we're going to have a party. It's just awesome. So please, please, please go download this celebration guide and celebrate with us that we are hitting episode 200. This really is a big milestone, and I'm going to get into that into this episode, but I teach my students all the time to celebrate our wins, our big wins, our small wins, our accomplishments. And what this 200th episode means to me is that we're not going anywhere. This is proof that I am in this podcast game for the long haul. I have accomplished 200 episodes. Now, it has been over the course of 7 years. We launched in summer of 2018. So 2019, 2020, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years of podcasting. I'm having a hard time even wrapping my brain around the fact that it's been that long and the fact that we're at 200 episodes. I think I did the math once, and that averages out to at least 2 episodes a month, which is great. That is great progress. Now, of course, in messy success fashion, that has looked a little bit like taking a summer off or taking a winter off and then posting every week in these cycles. But in the last 2 years, we have gotten even more consistent. You guys know how I feel about the word consistent. We'll talk about that later. But I'm really incredibly proud of myself to be a manifesting generator, to have the creative energy that I have, that I'm always kind of taking on new things and accomplishing them and moving on. The beautiful thing about a podcast is there is no ceiling on my growth. There's really nowhere for me to get with the podcast that I would feel like, oh my gosh, now I'm bored or this isn't stimulating for me anymore. So let's talk a little bit about the last 7 years and what I have learned. And let's talk about what has worked first. Everyone always asks me, like, what do you love most about doing a podcast? Or how does a podcast help your business? And my answer to that is always something to do with the fact that this is my number one nurture system. I'm not going to say my number one lead generator because it's absolutely not. We have a lot of work to do as far as really calling in more listeners. But the people that do listen to this podcast are the most likely to want to work with me. So if you're thinking about a podcast, keep that in mind, that if you love audio and you love speaking, I would speak any day before writing a blog or anything like that, even over video. I love video. I'm here. Hello, we're doing it. But speaking is really my love language, and I've always loved doing a podcast because, it's like I don't have to really get dressed and do my makeup. I can just talk into the podcast and reach the people that are the most connected to me. So it really has been kind of our number one nurture system, and that's what I love. And I love that it's my favorite way to do content. um it's my favorite way to deliver outside of like actually being live in a room with people. Another thing I love about the podcast is it really is evergreen content. So if someone were to ask me a question about, say, hey, like, what are some marketing ideas for my brick and mortar business? I can refer them back to that episode of the podcast, which I think was actually 2 episodes ago, 197, I believe, if that interests you. Um, and that way I don't have to repeat myself. I can send this resource to people as they ask questions. And the searchability, obviously, the SEO is a big piece. Now we're still learning a lot. We're still trying to tackle that. We're seeing a lot of success on YouTube with the searchability versus just the abyss of the podcast world. Um, and we really haven't put in our maximum effort to SEO on the website. There's so much room for improvement. It's like, laughable, but I'm doing it. That is the most important piece. I'm taking the action, and it is a space where people can connect with me and learn more about how I operate and decide if they want to go farther. And some people just listen to the podcast, and that's great. So it is absolutely hands down my favorite way to deliver content, which is another reason that I love it. And the industry is changing, which is another reason why we're really leaning into this aspect of video. Uh, there's just It's just so different than it was 7 years ago. I mean, 7 years ago, I would post my podcast, and that's when Instagram was still very community driven, and people would listen and they would share about it all the time. I mean, you can go to my Instagram at Elizabeth.Henson and look at the highlights and see a lot of the podcast growth and reviews and people listening over the years. But there's so much more of it in the beginning than there is now, because the social behavior on Instagram is just changing. And, these are all free tools that we get to use for our business. And so I'm just leaning in and trying to keep up with the pace as much as I possibly can. But the podcast is hands down my favorite way for people to get to know me. It's my favorite way to communicate and to just brain dump and brainstorm. My entire business journey, especially from pivoting from photography into the coaching space that I'm in now, it's all on the podcast. This is the most vulnerable, behind the scenes documentation of my business that I could possibly imagine. And it's all there. It's all there. I mean, it's incredible. You can see how many times I have changed directions, up leveled. Let's not use the word pivot. We are expanding, but you can see it all. The good, the bad, the flops, the failures, everything is on the podcast. And that's really powerful. And for me, it's just been this experience of documenting and sharing my greatest lessons along the way, and hopefully in a way that helps other people. And that's really what our mission here at the Messy Success Podcast, the Messy Success Show, now that we're going to do this on YouTube too, is all about. And I'm really excited. We'll talk more about that in episode 200. Now, let's talk about some of the cons or some of the things that have not been great as far as having a podcast over the last 7 years. And it's expensive. Like, it's a little more expensive than I think I was prepared for over time. Now, it doesn't have to be expensive. You can get started with very minimal equipment. You could literally get started with your phone and some of those $10 Amazon mics and just upload your audio to Libsyn. I think we only, are on the $7 a month Libsyn plan to host the podcast. So you can be extremely minimal. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. But we have on a lot of the software and technology and, just buying a new webcam, the monthly expenses to make sure that we can do our show notes, hiring a team to help with, prepping each episode, the assets. I have a creative director that helps with all the assets for the podcast. And, for a long time, I was investing in a lot of these things and not really able to document the ROI of the podcast. And I was willing to work through all of that and to invest in myself and to invest in the mission. And that's still very much what I'm doing. And the fact that I have 200 episodes, I mean, I don't think I want to do the math on how much money has been spent on the podcast over the last 7 years. That would probably hurt my stomach a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's a really important piece of my marketing machine. So that all kind of comes out of the marketing budget of the business. And I don't ever want money or investing to be the thing that stops someone. But I also want people to be fully prepared that I call it sometimes like the boat of my business, because people laugh about buying a boat because they don't really hold their value. They're not really resellable and you just are constantly putting money into it. And that's kind of how I felt about the podcast at times. But because my mission is so clear to me and it's so important, I will show up when no one's listening. And I've always been that way with my business. It's never really been like, oh my gosh, I have to do this to get this, right? It's always been, I really want to help people. I really am following my heart. I'm following my mission. And I'm going to talk about these things. I'm going to do this, even if only like my mom is listening, right? Whatever it is, I am going to continue to do it because I 10 out of 10 believe in the work that I'm doing. And I know that it's helping people. And I just really stay laser focused on that on the days that I want to be discouraged, on the days that I feel like, it's the money pit of my business or that it's just a lot of work. And I think a lot of people will dive in to a podcast thinking it's going to be the thing that's going to change their business. And that's not necessarily true. Can it be an incredible content driver? Absolutely. Can it be the thing that changed your business? Absolutely. But most of the time, it just works its way into your entire marketing wheelhouse. And that's one thing that I really help my students do is build their marketing machines. It's not just let's create an offer and post on social media and hope for the best. You want to have a long form content machine. You want to have short form content. You want to have email newsletters. You want to have SMS marketing. I've talked a lot about that. There's all these different pieces to your marketing. And when those come together, that's when you really build this beautiful, repeatable process. Now, I'm not saying be all the places at all the same time, but you do want to have multiple ways of reaching your people so that we're not just relying on one platform. Okay. Another thing is like, this is a long game. A podcast is not going to be a get rich quick and overnight success. It is a long game. And as I'm proving that with being at 200 episodes over the course of 7 years, I think we are somewhere around, 500 downloads a month, which to me is incredible. I'm so grateful for that. That's stretchy, but this is very, very much a long game. We are here for the long haul. We're here whether we have 3 people listening or 3,000 people listening. We're just doing it. We're doing the work. And I am leading my community by example, and that it doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to be out there. One of my favorite quotes or like facts that I read recently was that the most successful people are putting out content that is 60% good 95% of the time, right? So they're doing more and they're taking quicker action than sitting back and waiting for things to be perfect. So it's like you can post 3 times a week and it's pristine and perfect and maximum effort, or you can post 7 times a week and maybe it's only 60% good. But your 60% good is going to be mind blowing for someone who only knows that subject matter at 20%. So, no matter what, even if your stuff is only 60% good, you're still helping a ton of people. So, and then the other thing I wanted to touch on is just how much this like has been stretching my ability to commit and stick with something. And I kind of mentioned that in the beginning. This has been really stretchy for me to just keep doing this and to maintain and to keep showing up over the last 7 years. I haven't changed the name. I haven't given up. If anything, we're just doing more and more cool stuff with the Messy Success brand. We have the planner, we have the sticker book, we have stickers. Oh my gosh. So those are some of the things on my heart that I wanted to share about where we've been and what it's been like to host a podcast for 7 years. We've had so many incredible guests. I did want to share some of the standout episodes from the last 7 years. These specifically are in the top 100. So episode 26, How to Become a People Magnet. You guys, this was one of my first opt-in and lead generator, get people on my email list type of effort. Oh my gosh, I feel like I would be so embarrassed to go back and look at that. But that episode did really well. Entrepreneur life and adult friendships. That is episode 42. Ooh, that's a juicy one. And it like brings back all those emotions just thinking about it. Losing friends as a grown-up is freaking hard. My dear friend Adam, his episode about real estate did really well. That's episode 72. And another episode with a college friend of mine, Jason, episode 91. I wanted to reflect on those for just a moment because I'm like, okay, this is weird. I haven't had a lot of guys on the podcast. And the fact that these 2 guys, one that I went to high school with and one that I went to college with, their podcast performed really well. Here's why I think that is. A of all, because we have a lot of mutual connections. So there are people that may have never listened to my podcast, but that know both of them and me, and that know them and me, and they want to like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. They're connecting. What are they talking about? So I think that there's that piece, but also those are both like very successful men that already have a successful audience and followers. And a lot of times the people I'm bringing on the podcast are just getting started, or they're students of mine or community members of mine or peers of mine. So I think that's why those two did particularly well. Episode 86, A Turning Point in My Creative Business. Oh boy. I don't even know what that one is, but it has tea. I'll tell you that much. Joy Michelle is an incredible YouTuber. Her episode did really well, growing a community to over 10K. That's episode 97. And then for our 100th episode celebration, I talked about 5 things worth sharing about. It was just like, hey, episode 100, here's 5 things that I think are worth sharing with you. So that's pretty cool. But like I said, this 200th episode, we are really going all in on celebrating. And I don't know if you've been around here very long, but I am obsessed with leadership. And I did want to just reflect for a minute on when this started for me and what that's looked like, because recently I had this epiphany, this moment where I realized I've been obsessed with leadership my entire life. And I remember being a really young student athlete, and I would study the team captain. Even watching sports on TV, I would study the starters and the team captain and the coach and their behaviors. And that's how I learned to eventually become team captain and get MVP awards and coaches awards, because I was always watching the person who is leading, and I was assessing what they were doing differently than those who were not. What is the player that's starting and playing all game every game doing differently than those on the bench? And I would study their habits, and I would study how they behaved, and I would study how they would treat others. And this did backfire sometimes. There's a lot of moments in my life where I felt like someone else was in that position who didn't have the characteristics that I knew intuitively were supposed to be, right? And that I would get my feathers would get really ruffled about that. Like even in college, like seeing some of the starters like go out and drink the night before a game when I knew we had a dry season, like, to me I was like, that's not leadership, right? But I know what leadership is because I always watched and studied, and something inside me just knew what was the right thing for leaders to be doing. And it wasn't always being perfect, but it was admitting that they had work to do. It was being a student themselves. One of my favorite things about my coach is that no matter how wealthy and successful that he is, he's always a student, and he models being a student of the world so incredibly well that I was like, that's the kind of leader I want to be. And I still learn so much, not only from being coached by him, but from watching him. That's just one of the ways I have always learned, is being an observer. So, what is something in your life that you've kind of been obsessed with all along that maybe you didn't notice or pay a lot of attention to, and how it incorporates into what you're doing now? Because that was really cool for me, because whenever my imposter syndrome would come up of like, oh, well, I haven't done that leadership course or that leadership course or read that book yet. But then I said, but wait, but I have been a student of this my entire life. And that feels powerful. And that feels like I can show up as a 10 out of 10 with my certainty on how I can help people. So thank you for being here for episode 199 and our experiment on our first YouTube first type of recording. If you're just nosy and want to know more about that, essentially, I'm flipping my process. We used to record audio first, and then I would have a team member kind of like um, prep the video for YouTube, and we've really struggled to like keep that momentum going on YouTube. And now if I'm recording YouTube first, just meaning that I'm recording video with my first swoop of the podcast, and we're going to be kind of rebranding YouTube to center around the podcast. I've seen some success with this with some of my peers. So shout out to Lennon. Thanks, Lennon. And a few other people. And already just in uploading our audio files to YouTube, we have already seen a huge spike in our YouTube views. So I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. We're going to try it and see how it goes. I might come back at episode 250 and be like, we tried that for over a year and it wasn't what we wanted. So you never know what could happen. But business is all a big experiment. So, I'm just excited that you're here. Don't forget to go to elizabethhenson.co/celebrate200. Get those freebies. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you love them. Please let me know if you even watch this. elizabethhenson.co/celebrate200. And thanks for being here. As always, thank you so much for pushing play today. It means the world to me, and I'm extending so much gratitude your way. And we have so much cool stuff to look forward to. So make sure you come back to episode 200, which is going to be next week. And we're going to share all the things that are to come with this celebration and after hitting this huge milestone. And I hope you'll celebrate. Okay, bye, guys.